Life is Art is dedicated to bringing you insightful commentary on art, culture, and life. To support the podcast, feel free to make a monetary donation or purchase our official Life is Art merchandise at the link in the description. Your donation helps us to reach a wider audience and helps us to gain traction in the world of social media. Thank you for your viewership and support. Life is Art. Art moving at the speed of life. Life moving at the speed of art. As I notice the appreciation for aesthetics in decline, I notice that there is a corresponding decline in the quality of life of most people in the country. And, it's really hard to explain the value of aesthetic beauty to people that live lives that don't necessarily have the time to sit and smell the roses and, you know, uh, digest beauty all around them. But we see the effects of a world that's becoming more and more devoid of beauty. We're seeing people that are becoming automations. Life is simply a series of um, reactions and functions. And we're essentially becoming sentient beings that are in motion, but not necessarily experiencing the world around them and all that it offers. Um, After all, we live in a time where you know your coworkers more than you know your families. You see them more than you see your families. And work has become home, and home has become a reprieve from your work home place. Actual life outside of things that are necessity for us to survive are becoming uh, unbalanced. Things that we should have the time for are now brief intermissions in the scope of our lives. And I think when we valued art, and I think when we valued beauty, we created spaces that still celebrated those ideas of a place feeling like home, looking like home, making some kind of sense. Um, and I've even noticed that with myself as an artist. I was I was a bit OCD with the manner in which I lived. The art that was on my wall was hung a certain way. My place was meticulously clean. My shirts were divided by color, gradiated from the lightest of that shade of blue to the darkest shade of blue, or red, or brown, or green. Um, Throws were placed perfectly. And now, since I've become surrounded by a less beautiful world, I find my interior becoming less beautiful and just more functional. I'm not a slob by any stretch of the imagination, but I have become an individual that is um, resigned to just good enough. A blanket might have a stain on it that didn't wash out in the laundry, and I'm like, that's okay. Um, my home isn't necessarily the showroom for open studios that I was wanting. That's okay. There are no customers, so to speak. What's the point? Well, previously, there were not very many customers before that would come to my place. I'm a very solitary human being, but there was still the value of creating a space that I wanted to live in. And now, as somebody once told me, any flat surface will do. And that is the way that I am beginning to approach life. And I don't know if that's because of age necessarily or because of the cumbersome nature of trying to curate a home. I find myself so steeped in practicality that the creation of art is the only avenue for aesthetic joy that I have. Whereas once upon a time, My joy ranged in interior design, how my home looked and felt. All that matters to me now is that it's reasonably clean. And I'm becoming that very person that I used to, in my less mature times, mock and ridicule. I would laugh at people with their lazy boy chair sitting in their living room, completely destroying whatever, you know, eye candy or visual beauty was present in that room. I laughed at people who had um, um, art from Ross or from TJ Maxx instead of original pieces. But the practical way in which they lived, they were simply trying to cover a hole in the wall, perhaps made by a moment of anger, or they purchased a house with a hole in the wall that they didn't want to patch. I find myself living that exact same way. And perhaps the person becomes too tired to care about beauty and art and aesthetical value. Perhaps the world, the society that we live in now beats you so far into the ground that you can't consider anything except your own um, mental survival. I find myself, when I come in from work, pretty beat down, um, not necessarily thinking about work because I've always been able to separate myself from my job, but the toll. And I don't find myself um, waking up in the morning wondering how am I going to move this art around and make my home feel like a home, because my priority now has become those practical things. The home is nothing more than a structure to keep rain off your head. And when life starts to become like that, then you are at the beginning of your own spiritual death. This is where you begin to die on the inside. And it's deeper than whether your home is color coordinated or a throw is, laying just right on the couch. It's the deterioration of everything that is of value that isn't practical. Art is not a practical thing, but that doesn't negate its necessity. But when necessities are the very thing that make it possible for you to even create art, i.e., the necessity of money, the necessity of shelter, um, the necessity of security. When the quest for those things becomes so absolute that there isn't room for anything else, then nothing else is born from that situation outside of the perpetual desperation that you have for it. And these are things that we don't consider in life and society because we're simply too busy. We're too busy trying to find a an oasis to where we can begin living. What we don't understand is that um, our lives are spent being on a quest for that oasis rather than making the oasis where we find ourselves at. And this is a terrible tragedy. This is a really, really bad tragedy that unfortunately we've adopted from a society standpoint as the norm. This is how it's supposed to be. We are supposed to be miserable to a certain degree. And if you're not miserable to a certain degree, then there's a good chance that you're not an adult. And that's what life has become. As an artist, it's been transformative for me to see um, what I no longer am able to feel, what I'm no longer able to perceive or experience. Walking home in the rain used to be transformative for me. Now it's merely an inconvenience to getting into the house, taking my wet clothes off, taking a shower, and going to bed and anticipating work. This is what life is for many of us. And if you do something repetitiously long enough, it becomes your norm. And thus, society is going to forget about aesthetics, beauty, art, and simply how to live. I'd love to know what you think. This is your guy, the brave artist, for Life is Art. Share, like, and subscribe, and let others know about our growing channel. Until the next time, take care.